We are live. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fit Parent Project. Today, I am joined with somebody that you all probably know quite well from, my network, from my community, from my coaching staff as well, and that is Coach Jenn. She is joining me today on the podcast, and today we're going to be interviewing her a little bit. Kind of maybe interviewing each other, I guess, a little bit too. About her, experience as, now stepping into the role of a coach, also her journey thus far, and kind of a little bit of like an update on how far like she's come thus far. Like, cause I don't know, do you remember the last time we had a podcast episode together? It was a while
Like
ago.
October?
Holy shit. Really? Holy shit.
Yeah, I
That's
think it was
crazy.
October.
That's a long ass time. Well, introduce yourself, like say what's up, give them a little bit of like who you are and all that good stuff, and we can, just kind of go from there.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jen. I am a coach on prechtelevate, and I've been in this community for 15 months, and I've been a coach for 4 months, and we're slaying it all. Very exciting.
It's pretty epic. That's crazy that we've worked together that long. Like, because it was,
yeah.
I'm trying to think back of when like we officially started working together, and it was in the like kind of like late winter of.
It was the end of February,
okay, that's right.
of last year.
Dude, that's crazy. And like thus far, and I want to preface everybody, we're going to be on this episode just kind of like haphazardly, just kind of going on the fly conversation, because I feel like oftentimes those are where you have some of your best like kind of golden nugget moments and things like that. And so we just got kind of like a general framework for today's episode, but we're just going to kind of, go off on a variety of topics and whatever kind of comes to mind. But as far as like us working together, it's been like 15 months, which is fucking insane. And in that period of time, like not only have you like stepped into the role of like coach and leader and beyond, but also like you've been like, it's even since October, like your progress has been like fucking insane. Like it's really interesting. It's really cool. Like I don't think I've told you this before, but like when you moved to Texas, right? Like when you moved there, for that period of time, like you left and then you came back. And when you came back, I was just like, because I'd seen you on video chat and stuff like that before, like since then. But like when you came back, I was like, holy shit, she isn't even the same motherfucker. like since she left, it was crazy. Just kind of like that just how drastic of a difference because of the work that you've been putting in that we've, it was like clear as day. I was like, holy shit. Like,
like yeah, because I saw you right before I left Spokane, and I saw everybody at work, and then now I've gone back to work. I don't work in the office there, but I am working, and people like kind of look at me when they pass, and they're like, and I'm like, hey, so-and-so, and they're like, who are you? And I was laughing. I was there on Wednesday and I had my hair up, and this one guy says, oh, it's because your hair's up. I'm like, yeah, that's it. It's because my hair is up.
it's the hair.
But yeah, literally people are like, oh my gosh, where's the rest of you? And I'm like, she's gone and dead. And thank God for that. So
that's freaking awesome. And just so like everybody like knows and is like kind of gets a little bit of like, I guess like an update on your journey, like you've made some insane progress in the last like not only 15 months, like 15 months, like, like to like 18 months. Cause I know like you started like your journey a little bit before we started working together, but like, since you began, like, feel free to share with the audience, like, where we're at right now, as far as progress goes, like in total.
Yeah. In total, I started a few months by myself before Austin found me, and I've lost 135 pounds.
Can you say that again? How much? How much is that?
135 pounds.
Like that. Like I think people, it's hard to grasp and kind of like fathom.
It's a whole person.
Yeah, to fathom how much that is in reality. Like when you like step aside and you kind of like look at that and you're like, that is fucking insane. That is incredible. Like that does not happen by accident. That does not happen by accident. That comes from like making the conscious choice to like change some shit up, like, and not just like change a little bit of shit up, like to like, changed, like, to like not all at once, but drastically
Mhm.
over time, like changing the course and trajectory of your life and your habits and your, like, I don't know, like, I think it's just been such a cool, like, thing to see. And I'm extremely, I mean, I tell you all the time, but I'm extremely fucking proud of you, and how
Thank
far
you.
you've come and everything. And I think that, like, just seeing, like, from when we first started to where we're at now, like, there's always, like, I'll have clients that'll come into the program, and from the get-go I'm like, okay, you're gonna be that motherfucker, like, you're gonna be that, like, you can kind of tell from, like, personality trait a little bit, and then also, like, just how on the ball they are kind of from the beginning. And, like, I definitely had that feeling from you. And, like, I mean, lo and behold, like, you definitely, like, stood up to the not expectations, but just, like, to, like, like, you were who I thought you were going to be, which is pretty fucking cool. Like,
Yeah.
to witness, your transformation and your growth as, like, an individual. And we're getting some fun comments here too. Like, Jen
Uh,
Smith says, "Happy Friday, catching you live." Phoebe says she is a badass, which could not agree more. Shauna says,
mm,
because she's fucking amazing. So,
uh,
like,
Thank you.
yeah, I feel like, you're, like, I don't know, people really, like, are inspired by you too, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think maybe, like, the last time that we talked on the podcast, like, it was, like, I don't know, I feel like whenever I said that, maybe, like, because I remember saying something along those lines, and, like you believed it, but, but not like as much so as, like, now that you stepped into that, like, coaching role, and you stepped into
Mhm.
that place where, like, you are share. I remember when we were talking about how, like, because you were nervous to, like, share your journey or share your progress on social media. and uh,
Absolutely.
and I was like, do you know how big of an impact you could have if you did that shit? Like, do you know how many people would be like, holy shit, like, I could do that too, and be, like, inspired. And then we finally did it. And then, lo and behold, like, that post, like, popped the fuck off, like, and had, like,
Yeah.
a ton of likes and shares and comments of people just being like, talking about how inspiring you are, and how, like, amazing, like, it has been to see you transform. And so, coming from that to where we're at now, and now that you're a coach, like, how how do you feel like your life's changed, like, over the course of us working together? And then maybe we can talk about how things have changed, like, or maybe, like, why you even, wanted to become a coach in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. First, I want to say that I appreciate the comments and all the love and everything. I love that people feel inspired, and I tell my clients all of the time. I know it's scary to put yourself out there, and now that I've done it, I'm like, I don't like looking at those pictures either. Hell, I mean, half the time I'm still struggling with my own body image
Yeah.
and my mindset as well. I still have a ways to go, but what I can do is look at how far I've come.
Hmm.
And that's worth a lot.
Yeah.
And knowing how much hard work I've put in and all of that stuff as well. But so, what I will always tell people is if you could inspire just literally one person, you have to tell your story.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like, I could not agree more with that, because, like, and not everybody's, like, a public person. Not everybody's, some people like to, keep their, privacy or whatever. And that I can respect that. But at the same time too, it's like, for me, and, people don't have to feel the same way, but, like, for me, in my mind, I'm like, man, if I don't tell my story or what I went through, like, in terms of, like, maybe it's, me talking about my mental health, or, like, the depression or whatever that I've gone through, or, like, my addictive tendencies or things like that. Like, if I'm keeping that to myself and I'm not sharing my story, like, I know that if I'm struggling with this shit, and vice versa, like, it parallels to, you talking about sharing your story with your weight loss journey and your health journey. Like, I feel selfish keeping that, like, that story and that info and that, like, relatability and that normalization of the stuff that, other people I know for a fact are going through, if I'm going through it too. And it's just like, if I'm keeping that to myself and I'm not sharing my story with other people, like, there are people that are, like, struggling and suffering out there because I'm too scared to, like, be my authentic self, and tell my story and shine that light. And I think that, you know, and I feel like, and I'm guessing that you feel, pretty similar now, that, especially now that you have shared your story, and, like, you've seen, like, firsthand the impact that, I mean, you've inspired a fuck ton of people, like in your network and my network, and in the area, and just like I know that people, really like. I mean, you walk the freaking walk, like you talk the talk, like you do, you do what you say you're going to do. And like you're a living example of what's possible for other people who, are in the position that you were in before you started. And I think that that's just like, it's, that I will say that is one of like, I wouldn't call it a downfall or whatever of mine, but like, like I've never been at that spot necessarily in that specific way in my journey. Like I can relate and I can empathize. And I mean, I've had my own, like, I mean, I've been up there before to some degree, but like not like in the way and in the sense and in that stage of your life too, being a mom and things like that. Like, I feel like, there's a lot of relatability. There's a lot of like, people can like see your story and see your like come up and like be like, damn, like they can like really like, they look in the mirror and they see that same person kind of like looking in the mirror back at them. And I think that that's just like I don't know. I view that as like, your like not superpower, but like that's your kind of like, like your, I don't know, like everybody's got their like come up story. Right. And I feel like your come up story really hits home for a lot of, moms out there who are in that spot. Yeah.
I can understand that too. And a lot of times I hear, I wish I could be like you. I wish I could do what you do. I wish I had as much motivation. Yeah. Okay, well, what I tell every single person that tells me that is stop wishing, start doing. Because I was there. I used to wish a lot of stuff too. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but it just doesn't happen with wishing. No. You can't write yourself all the affirmations in the world and just say them over and over again and expect this type of change to happen. So if you truly want to make a change, and if you truly want to show up for yourself, show up for your children, show up for the people, whoever it is, you have to literally change what you're doing day in and day out. And I get that it's super hard, but you choose your hard. I mean, we say that all the time. Yep. It was super hard for me at over 350 plus pounds to do freaking anything. Yep. I didn't even want to walk really. Like I was, but I couldn't get up and down with my daughter on the floor. I couldn't go up the stairs very well. And it's like, I could choose that hard. Yep. And then I could choose all the medication I was going to be on, and probably diabetes and heart disease and all of the other things, that run in my family. Or I can choose the hard of making changes, little changes every single day for a long period of time to literally change the trajectory of my life. Yep. Pick one.
Yep. I cannot like, man, that's so freaking true. And people oftentimes like people don't realize, they don't have the awareness that it's like you're doing hard things all the time. It's just the hard that you're used to. Like it is like, it is the one that you have accepted, that is your reality and that is your life. And a lot of people, that hard is, living a like maybe an unfulfilled or inactive life, or a life that they're not able to be there for their kids in the way they want to be in, or again, being the heart of like, it might, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm fine right now. Well, okay, 20, 30 years down the line, like you're going to have fatty liver disease. You're going to have, you could have like heart disease or fucking heart attack. Like you're going to be on tons of medications that you otherwise could have avoided, surgeries, et cetera, and spending like, all the time that your retirement that you finally got to have after working your ass off your entire life, but you're going to spend it in a fucking hospital or in like a lazy boy, not being able to do shit like that for me, like that is the hard that I would never want for myself. And I mean, you're choosing it because like you can choose it. It's people oftentimes feel like they don't have a choice, but in reality, that's just like, I mean, it's a limiting belief. And then also it's just like, it's because you've like programmed yourself for so long, or you've been programmed or whatever to accept that as being like the safe or easy alternative, when it's just as fucking hard, if not harder. Like
absolutely.
Like,
and
mentally,
it's not too
emotionally,
late.
Physically, it's horribly hard. Like it's
and it's not too late. Like that's one thing I want to tell people too, is that I have clients who are, I mean, for those of you who see my lovely face on Facebook and think I'm 30, I am going to be 41 this October.
Yeah.
And I started, I was 39 or whenever I was, yeah, 39, 40. I was 40. No, I don't even know how to do math. So stop. I was 39. But what I'm saying is, I have clients who are 50. I have clients who are over 60.
Yep.
Like they're
Same.
making changes and they're seeing
Yep.
changes every single day. Stupid things like I can pick up the freaking bag of dog food at Costco. I
Yep.
couldn't do that before. It
Yep.
was so hard for me. Oh my gosh, I'm walking around my house without having to stop
Yep.
and take a breath. Like I'm
Yep.
just doing it. There are things you can literally change about your everyday life that do not have to be so hard.
Yep. So true. So true. I mean, right there with you. I mean, we've got a couple of clients that are in their 60s or their 70s. And it's just like, like I've had a couple of them, like one of them, her name's Candy, just for example, like she's in her 60s and she's like, holy shit. We're like, for the first time ever, my A1C's been down and I'm no longer like, pre or diabetic or whatever. And it was just like, and she did that in her 60s. Like she was able to come off of some of her medications in her 60s because of the decisions that she made on a daily basis. And she just decided, like, I'm going to make a change. I'm tired of feeling like this. I don't want this to be the rest of my life. And in doing so, she's also prolonging her life. And so is everybody else. It doesn't matter how old you are. Like you right now, it's preventative. Like it's that whole thing. Like, yeah, you might be quote unquote healthy or in like within range right now in a lot of these things, but that shit adds up over time. Like that shit adds up over time. Like, and I truly believe and I think the health and fitness industry is really fucking bad about this. And I think it comes from a lot of like ignorance. And I think it comes from a lot of people, like young people who can't be empathetic too in a lot of ways. And there's older people too that can't be empathetic either, that are just shitty coaches in general. But like, I truly believe, like, I do not think your weight defines your worth. I do not. I think you have value innately and separately from your weight. Like I truly
Absolutely.
But, and your weight does not define your worth, but in a lot of ways it can define your health. And that's facts. That's science. Like that's like, and I don't want to like, I don't want to like sugarcoat that to try and like, not hurt somebody's feelings, because there's no feelings that need to be hurt in that. It's just me making a statement about the reality of the situation, and and then also quality of life. And I think like people can do whatever they want with their life and with their bodies, but I want a lot of people to know that that doesn't have to be the only route that they have to take, or that they, like you said, that they have to feel like they're stuck, or like they feel like it's too late or whatever. Like you started in your late 30s, maybe 40.
I was 39.
On the math. And like we talked about, like we've got clients that have started in their 60s and 70s that have been struggling with what they've been struggling with for like decades, like 40, 50 fucking years. And they're like, today's the fucking day. I'm going to do something about it. And then they did. And it's just like, it is never too late to like write that next chapter for yourself. Like I think that like, like you're not too far gone. Like you are not.
No.
Like nobody is. And
yeah. Can I get on a soapbox for a second?
Yep, sure.
Okay. Since I have this platform, and because I was this person with the body positivity, and again, I don't want to put anybody down. I don't want to say you can't live your life the way that you want, but I know for a fact it is completely unhealthy.
Yeah.
And if you love yourself, great. That is something that's completely separate from how your body is functioning and the work that it does for you on a daily basis. If we treat our bodies well, it will treat us well for a very long time. And I just want everyone, especially those that have been in my shoes or are currently in the shoes that I was in, a year and a half ago, to remember that you can love yourself so much that it's okay not to listen to social constructs of you're totally fine in your 350 plus body. You're not totally fine. You're not, and you will not be, and you will not be here for a long time. And those are just the facts. So off my soapbox now.
No, I completely agree. And it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, it's like quality of life. It's quality of life. And if you have kids too, like, and this is, again, they're not putting anybody down, like it, and like everybody is where they're at, like for a reason in a lot of ways. And sometimes it was our fucking upbringing. Sometimes it was like, again, that goes back to like, it's not your fault. but at the end of the day, it comes down to maybe a place of responsibility. It's like, it's not your fault that maybe you had like abusive parents, or that you're like, you had an abusive whatever, or, you know, you came from a place of like really bad poverty and you didn't have any, like, you know, like nobody taught you how to, you know, eat healthy growing up or anything like that. Like, I know a lot of people that are in that boat, but like, especially if you have kids now, it's like, you have an obligation and a responsibility to your kids to like, to not have them go through what you went through, and to break that generational cycle. And you're not going to be able to do that if you're, you know, in this place of pain and discomfort, and, you know, not being healthy, and like you said, like, you know, not to sugarcoat it, but like you're going to die young. You're very
Yeah.
likely to die young. There are not a lot of people who are past the age of like 60 or 70 for very long that are like 300 plus pounds. Like, your
Yeah.
heart cannot handle that shit, and your other organs and things like that. And it's just like it's just one of those things. Like, I think people are so sometimes caught up in living in the now, and it may not even be like intentional. It may just because they've got so much shit going on, or they're so caught up in, you know, the chaos of life, that like, it's hard to like see forward into the future. And some people are aware of it, and it sucks and it's hard, and maybe they're struggling because of mental health reasons or whatever it may be. But, you know, you've got to be proactive. Like, you've got to take that responsibility at some point to do something about it. And it doesn't have to be a great big leap or a great big jump or a huge change at all. Like, it can literally be, today I'm going to decide that I'm going to stop drinking full calorie soda and I'm going to start drinking Coke Zero instead. Like, that could be that simple change that you start to make. And, or, hey, like, instead of, watching TV for a half hour, you know, during maybe my lunch break or whatever, maybe I'm going to go for like a walk around the block. Like, and that could just be that first like seed that gets planted in your life, that's going to start to get watered and add up over time and compound over time. And eventually you're going to wake up one day and be like, holy shit, look at all these changes that I've made, because you've habit stacked. You've built a new routine from these small little changes over time that, you know, started and became what it was because you just made a small little choice with yourself and said, like, you know what, today's going to be a little bit different than yesterday.
And it's not going to be fast. Like,
No.
you have to set your expectations realistically. None of us that got to the point that I was at, or that you're at, you know, if that's you, even if you're just 20 pounds, you know, bigger than you want to be, or 40 pounds or whatever, you don't have to be 135 pounds plus, but we didn't get that way overnight. So it is not going to be an easy road. I'm not here to lie to you and say that it's going to be overnight, or, you know, you can lose 100 pounds in a year. It might take you 2, but it's doing something every single day to get you to that goal, and not to have unrealistic expectations, because that is why you continue to quit on yourself.
Yep. It's so true. And like, I think that's why we emphasize so much at the beginning, like with our clients, like, hey, like we recently even just added like a whole mindset section to like our Facebook group guides. That's just like reality, like realistic expectations. Like we really try to set it from like the get go. Like, hey, like, you know, that I know what you've seen online. I know what you've seen in commercials. And I know what the sister-in-law has been trying to sell you from this whatever like, company, like, that you're going to be able to lose whatever amount in so much time. Like, I get it. Like, I know, like, we've all been like, you know, brainwashed in a way to think that that's health and fitness, and that's what a real health and fitness journey looks like. But that's just not the reality of it. And so we emphasize it big time from the get-go. Like, hey, like, this is going to take time. Like, this is like, it's going to suck sometimes. Like, you're not going to lose weight every single week. Sometimes, like, you're like, you know, sometimes like your weight's going to fluctuate, or you're going to be on your menstrual cycle, or you're going to feel like shit, or you're going to get sick or whatever. Like, you know, like being realistic about it and normalizing like that it's
life.
Life. Yeah, exactly. That's going to be, you know, that's going to help so much more than trying to lie to somebody and be like, hey, yeah, you're going to lose like 10 pounds in like 2 weeks in my program or whatever. And it's like, you know, I don't think that's, you know, the way to go about it. And so, and the other thing I wanted to mention too, you know, on top of, you know, setting those realistic expectations for someone is, you know, this idea that, you know, there's not like an endpoint to anyone's journey. Like, there's not like, truly, there's not a finish line. You can have goals that you aim for, but once you hit that goal, it's like, well, what's next? Like, you know, the journey never truly ends. And like you said, like, you know, not everybody's going to lose 100 pounds in a year. Very few people will, you know, but like, like you said, it might take 2 years. Who the fuck cares if it takes 2 years?
Who
Who
cares?
cares if it takes 5 years, motherfucker? Like, you're not gonna care. You're just gonna be happy that you got there in the first place. Like progress is not linear. It's not linear, and it's not exponential, and it's not gonna happen like it's gonna look like a fucking roller coaster that goes downhill. Like it really is. It's not gonna be a straight line. It's gonna have like hills. Sometimes they're gonna be big hills, and sometimes then
Yeah.
that hill's gonna go down over time. Like there's fluctuations when it comes to this, like with everybody.
And
And
the only way you don't progress in your journey is if you don't start.
yeah, or quit, and
Or
like
if you quit,
yeah,
of course.
yeah. But it's one of those things where I agree. And like there's a quote that I really like, and it's the journey of 1,000 miles started with a single step. And like you have to take that first step if you want to make any sort of progress. And so many people are they're scared to take that step. They they let fear and they let comfort, right? Even if it's a discomforting comfort that they're stuck in, kind of again that choose your hard. Like they're like, like this is just how I've been for so long. Like I'm scared to like change things. I what if I fail? What if I mess up or whatever? And it's just like you're gonna fail. Like you're gonna screw up. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure is literally part of the process. And if you can get over that, right? If you can get out of your like perfectionist or like all in all out mentality and just like again embrace the realistic approach and the reality of like life with your journey and be like, okay, like some weeks or some months I'm gonna be on the ball, I'm gonna be like we're gonna be cruising, I'm gonna be making progress, things are gonna be great. And then other months like you might not see anything change because you got sick or your kid got sick or maybe you had a death in the family or something happens like that. Like that shit's gonna happen. Like but if it's recognizing that that's normal and that you can still show up even after those things happen, or even during those things to some capacity, that something is better than nothing. And just having that like tenacity, like, you know what, like that knocked me down, like that whole like, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Like I'm gonna stand up today. I'm gonna stand up after that bullshit. I'm gonna keep on, chugging along, like, because I know I deserve this self-care for myself. I know my kids deserve this like version of me that I know I can become and that I'm becoming every single day. Like that's having that powerful why behind you is also just super important. And I think that I feel like if people realize like that, like hey, like one, it's okay if it does suck, but also hey, if you do it sustainably, it might not suck as much as you as it has in the past when you've tried, or that you're that and I think that like I think that if more people recognize that too, that they would benefit from it. Like, I mean, case in point, like, I mean, even you, like whenever you first started, your journey, like you were kind of going more of like an unsustainable route for that first bit,
very
right?
much so.
And
Like
going
I
from
was
that,
starving.
yeah,
I was so hungry.
yeah.
And I was losing weight. Obviously, I was losing weight. But had I continued on that, I would have burnt out. I would have quit. I would have gone back to everything else I would have always done. Plus, I would have regained all the weight back, plus probably more, which is all I've done my whole entire adulthood. And it is really freaking amazing to be able to eat food that I love and enjoy life and still see success.
Yep. Absolutely. And like, man, like just having a sustainable approach and having a game plan in place that's just like that you can like that if you do this, if it's because a lot of people, they have that uncertainty, right? They have that like they're like, man, like not only are they like uncertain about themselves and they have maybe like a lack of belief in themselves, but they also might have a lack of belief in if this program is going to work or not for them, or if this plan is going to work for them, because all the other things that I've ever done before were bullshit and they didn't work for me, and I like maybe it set me back even further. Why would this time be different or whatever? But like even if you can get that belief like from the program that like, hey, like if I follow this thing and I truly give it my all and I don't give up on myself, like I know that I'm going to get the results that I want on the other end. That can then kind of like one, it can breed a little bit of confidence that like it can at least get them to take that first step. And then once they actually start to give it their all and they actually start to do the damn thing, then that confidence starts to build within themselves a little bit more. And you just start to build this momentum to where you're just like, hey, like I know, like if I show up for myself and I do what I'm supposed to do, like I'm gonna see results. Like that is way more encouraging, and that is way more, I don't know, like not addictive, but like it can, I mean, it kind of can be like to the
it
progress itself. Like
it
yeah.
it creates, so people run on motivation way
Yep.
too often,
Yep.
but that momentum creates commitment and discipline,
Oh, for sure.
because you see
Mm,
what you see, how you feel, you see what's happening, you see the success, and it creates in you that desire to
yep.
want to continue to do it. Therefore, that's the discipline.
Yep.
Every single day that I wake up, I don't want to go to the gym every single day. There are plenty of days I do, because I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I love it. But there are plenty of days I do not want to get out of bed and go
Yep.
to the gym. But then this little new Jen is like, oh, you're going to feel so much better. Oh, like, that's not you anymore. You're going to get the hell up and go to the gym,
Yep.
because look at what you've done and look at where you're going.
Yep. Mm. I love that. And I mean, and that didn't happen overnight either. I mean, it happened from like day in, day out of just showing up little by little and making shifts. And over time, your mindset starts to shift, and that like, little inner like bitch voice that just like trying to like tell you not to do shit, or trying to get you
Yeah.
to like, sneak out on your responsibilities, or lack integrity to yourself for doing the things that you said you were going to do. It, which is really strong for a lot of people right now who are stuck in their, journey, or are stuck where they're at and they haven't been able to make the change. Bet that voice is pretty fucking strong.
Hmm.
I bet that voice is also pretty damn mean to you sometimes. And, you talk shit about yourself. You have a lot of negative self-talk. Bet that little inner bitch voice is pretty damn strong. But by making these subtle changes over time and proving that little bitch voice wrong, it starts to lose power. It starts to lose control over you. And what happens is a new voice starts to become more powerful. That's probably dead in a lot of you right now, or can't even fucking hear. And that's that
Yeah.
positive voice that is encouraging, that supports you, that wants to see you succeed, that wants you to be integral to yourself and to the shit that you said you were going to do. And that over time becomes stronger. And that, like you said, that new gen voice starts fucking screaming at you. And it's like, we're
Yeah.
disciplined. We are better than this. We know what we're going to get out of this. So we keep showing up. So let's keep showing up. Let's get up. Let's get out there. And for me, that voice got really strong for me too, especially, whenever I started kind of like this, almost like this business journey, but then also this this like self-discovery kind of journey for myself and everything like that. I'll be the first to be honest. I was so like pessimistic, and like
Mm.
I was like self-deprecating all the fucking time. My entire entirety of me being in high school and college and things like that. Like I I don't know. I wasn't a very positive person in general. Like I was on the outside, like with my friends and social circles, I was, but like
Hmm.
I did not like myself. I did not like myself
Hmm.
at all. I did not like who I was. I didn't like a lot of things about myself, because I wasn't being authentic and I wasn't being me. And I felt like I was like stuck in this fucking box. And that little bitch voice of mine was constantly letting me off the hook of doing the things that I said
Yeah.
I was going to do. And I was constantly lying to myself. And in doing so, it was impacting these other areas of my life. And then, once I finally was just like I started learning about like these, mindset, ideas and topics and things that like I could maybe implement in my own life. And a lot of that came from, mentorship. And a lot of that came from, learning how to do a lot of these things and working on my mindset, like all the mindset work, like things started to change over time. And now, like, I don't even know how I was living my fucking life. 4 years ago, like it was just like, I was like, damn, like looking where I'm at now, it's like, man, and it's not always great. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's unrealistic to think that every day is going to be great, but like, man, it like on average on a daily basis, it is so much fucking better to like be in this headspace and to have that stronger, like, new you voice than to like
Yeah.
live just, at the mercy of that little inner bitch voice. Like it's just, I don't know. That's not how I want to live my life. And I will never live my life like that ever again. And I know you're, in
Absolutely.
the same boat, I'm sure. Yep.
Same boat.
Yep. Yep. For
Rowing right
sure.
along.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Sweet. Well, I mean, this is we're already past a half hour on this one. So I mean,
Ooh.
so this is
We're talkers, you and
we are.
I.
Oh yeah. I mean shit. Yeah. No, yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, for those of you guys that don't know, it's like, so Jen's on my coaching team, right? She's working with prechtelevate and working for prechtelevate. But so we'll do like little power hours like once like a week or whatever, where we'll just like work on things for like, our clients or for the business or whatever it may be. But I will say probably like at least 50% of the time, it just turns into us like talking about shit that like lights us up and gets us motivated and things like that and hyped up and like invigorated about shit. And then I'm like, oh fuck. Okay. Well, it may not have been productive on like a, actually doing kind of work kind of thing, but
actions and tasks.
Yeah, but I think it was still productive in the sense of like, mindset and getting fired up about cool shit that's coming up and everything like that. So that's been
absolutely
that's been nice. But yeah, so cool. Anything else before we kind of end this one? Any last little golden nuggets or anything like that you want to
No, I think it's okay to change.
Yeah.
Don't let people tell you you're not allowed to or you can't. That little, voice inside of you that's muffled, that is something that you quiet for other people. Don't allow that anymore. If you feel like you're unable to say things or unable to do things because of what other people will think of you, stop the people pleasing. It was a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
And it held me back a lot. And now I am super thankful that I'm listening to new Jen. And that's growth, you guys. That isn't just, people get scared of change or people around them changing, but people should be changing. If you're not changing, you're not growing.
You're stagnant.
So don't be stagnant. Go out there and do something new. Believe in yourself for once. Bet on yourself for once.
Yep.
And I think the possibilities are pretty amazing. So,
boom. On that note, boom. Just dropping the mic, ending it there. Damn, cool, sweet, awesome. So, that being said, guys, thank you for listening to this episode. If you were listening right now, either live or on the podcast itself, do us a favor and screenshot this, share this episode, so other people can benefit from it and hear from not only me but this badass who joined me on this podcast episode today, because I really do. I feel like sometimes even when we're struggling to believe in ourselves, hearing somebody else speak greatness over us can oftentimes give us that that little push, that little whatever that allows you to take that first step to really go down an entirely different path than what you were set on. That's going to be what changes your life entirely. So doing that might help somebody. And also I've been talking on every episode since a couple days ago. I'm gonna be doing something special for episode 300. So getting in the habit of sharing this podcast is probably going to be a benefit to you. So yeah, on that note though, thank you for coming on today, Jen. Where can they find you at on socials?
All the socials, it's at Jenn Turvo, JENNTERVO.
Not turbo, but turbo.
No.
Awesome. Sweet, guys. On that note, we'll end the podcast here and we'll talk to you all in the next episode. Let's go.